Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. For those of you who are back again, welcome back. And for those of you who are here for the first time, my show is about celebrating. It's about celebrating artists and their body of worth. What makes a great artist? How did they get from point A to point B and beyond? What are the stepping stones that they've taken in their own path? That's what I'm all about. What are you celebrating today? Well, I'll tell you what I'm celebrating. I'm celebrating the one and only, the Shawn Ryan. And I am so thrilled that he's here today. Hello, Shawn. How are you?
I'm doing so great. So great to see your smiley face.
It's so good to see yours. It's been so long since we've seen each other. I think the last time that you and I saw each other was when you did your last Christmas show in New York at Don't Tell Mama.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we went on tour with that new album, and that was the last time we saw each other in person, face to face. Do you remember the first time we met?
I was thinking about that today. If I remember correctly, I was producing an event at the Soho Playhouse, and I found out that you were coming into town, and based on recommendations from our mutual friend, Carly Ozard, I put you in the show.
Yes. You literally, you put me in my first New York show. The very first time I appeared in New York was because of you. And it was tremendous. It was, I mean, there was, then I probably went and did my own show a week later or something and found out that, you actually have to get people to come into the show.
Well, that's a whole thing. We'll talk about that in a moment. I want you to turn down your speaker just a little bit, because otherwise we're going to get a little feedback here. But I want to begin with where we are right now, Shawn. And we are in the midst, or we're coming out of a pandemic. Broadway theaters have been announced that they're going to reopen starting in the fall. And on September 14th, everyone, Phantom of the Opera, Lion King, Wicked, those old war horses are going to reopen. You can't keep them down. And by all means, if you're able to do so, either here in New York or wherever you are, please, please, please buy tickets. And if you are uncomfortable about going to the theater, buy tickets for someone who is comfortable. We've got to get this going again. It's very important. Today marks 424 days since our theaters shut down. And I want to ask, how are you doing really in the midst of this crazy world we find ourselves in?
Oh, it's such a good question. There were so many typical answers for so long. And what I find now, 424 days, I can't believe that. I was lucky enough to be vaccinated early. So I think I was like a free man at the end of March and sort of felt like, of course, still wearing my mask everywhere, obeying all the rules, but just at least not scared to go to a restaurant or sit with a friend that I hadn't seen in a while. So it's been an interesting 2 months or 7 weeks of sort of reintegrating back into the world. And I went to my father's 70th birthday in Arizona, where everyone was vaccinated, double vaccinated. Everyone was good to go just last month. And after being at this party of like 15 or 16 people, I found I had to rush into the restroom, just lock the door and start breathing. Because I was like, whoa, this is so, for being such a social person for so long, man, staying inside for a year will definitely turn you into an introvert of all sorts. So, but I think I'm just so hopeful. Like in the state of California, of course we now, we still have a mask mandate when indoors. And certainly when I still pass people on the street, my mask is like a clutch. I mean, I just constantly am putting it on, taking it off. But it's nice to go for a walk now and not feel like you have to have your mask on. That's kind of amazing. And those little things that we used to take for granted are sort of now like the most wonderful little gifts. And probably the biggest news in my world, which some of you may know, is that for the last 20 years, I've been one of the co-founding directors of a theater camp, and we shut down during 2020, obviously, and now luckily in 2021 we are going to have over a 5-week period 350 campers. So
Wow.
not all at once, but we'll have 120 kids at a time. And not only is the Santa Cruz is where it's run, and not only is the Santa Cruz County Health Board saying that we can do it, but that we should. You know, they're like, this is what the kids need. And I'm like, kids, yes, this is what I need too. Get out of the house.
So are you doing anything virtually this year, or is everything hands-on?
So far, we have been lucky enough to have all of our campership come back for in-person. So we surveyed everyone to find out what everyone wanted to do, and parents were like, please take them. Like we need them to have the socialization. Also, I think the parents are ready for a break in a lot of ways too. Yes.
Last August 5th to be exact, which was the 41st anniversary of my coming to New York, I was supposed to conduct a virtual class with your students, which I was so excited about. And a major storm came through New York that day and knocked all of our power out. I was not able to do it. And I hope that somewhere, somehow, you will find a way to make that happen again, because it's something that I was really looking forward to.
Yes, we absolutely have got, and anyone watching who's an arts professional, I always tell this story because I think it's so comical that when Glee first started, Darren Criss was one of our very first masterclass teachers, and he really brought a lot of power to the camp. Like, I mean, it really, like, the Chronicle showed up and it helped us blow up in a new way. And of course, small businesses need these sorts of things. And about 3 or 4 years in to this Glee run, we had maybe 6 or 7 cast members. Our co-founding director, John Ainsworth, was a cast member of Glee, and we had so many different cast members. And at one point, one of the cast members' agents called me and said, how come my client has never been invited? And we were like, oh my God, no, it has nothing to do with being, oh gosh, we just couldn't possibly write a million emails to say, are you interested or are you not? So we sort of, like wonderful Richard did, we sort of wait for people to reach out to us and say, like, we'd love to do this, because we never want to put anyone on the spot. And it's really just the idea that, you know, this summer we've got people like Lori Metcalf and Megan Hilty and Eden Espinoza, and all these wonderful, wonderful teachers, some of whom
you weren't able to get any names this year?
No names, I know. I'd settle for Lori Metcalf. And so they come, but they're not just amazing performers. Sutton Foster has been a supporter of ours for years, and I always tell people, for as brilliant of a performer as she is, and she is a brilliant performer, can you imagine she's even a better teacher? Like, obviously they have to know how to do it in order to do it themselves. So these teachers are phenomenal. So I can't wait to have you come and teach, because it's so
well, I love this idea of paying it forward. And I go back to my own childhood. I talked about her on other episodes, but my mentor when I was a kid was Florence Epps. She had a little playhouse in her backyard, and I used to go to her home every Wednesday and Thursday. I'm going to share this story again. We would go and we would read from the classics. We would read biographies, everything. And she would pull up a name, and she would say, for example, Lori Metcalf. Do you know who she is? Ricky, as I was called then. And if I didn't know who she was, and this is in the day, everyone, before Google, she would close the book and she would say, I will see you next Wednesday. Know who Lori Metcalf is. And because she instilled in me that it was important that we celebrate those that have come before us. And I love the fact that these people who have reached all kinds of levels of success will come back and give back to these kids, which is very important. Who were the teachers when you were growing up who really made an impact on you, not only as an entertainer, which you are par excellence, those that made an impact on you as an entertainer, and then those who made an impact on you as a human being, and why?
Oh, that's a great question. I really believe that the greatest thing that this generation has going for them, like you said, is Google and YouTube. there's just no excuse anymore for not knowing someone's body of work. And actually, when I'm coaching kids, I will say, one of the things you can do if you've already memorized your monologue, you've already done your song, you have nothing else to do work-wise, is do the research. I think that's so good that you mentioned that. I really believe that I learned comedy and maybe made it 5% of the way towards this person from Lucille Ball. I used to fake being sick, and I'm sure my mother's probably watching this and knows that I fake being sick. But I used to fake being sick just so I could watch the 2 episodes that were on at 1 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. While I would have still been in school, Monday through Friday. Mm-hmm. By the end of my senior year of high school, the high school called my mother and said, he has missed the combination of 47% of his high school career. And I said, but I went to school every day with Lucille Ball, so she wasn't a teacher at school. So, mm-hmm. And then at my school, we had a wonderful drama teacher by the name of Linda Jenkins, who had studied with the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. And for the first time in my life anyway, I went to this freshman beginning drama class. And I think I made it through a week of class where she pulled me aside afterwards and said, I want you to go to the intermediate class. And that was like unheard of for a freshman. And I just thought, wow, for someone to see me and believe in me in this whole new way, it not only changed my life as a performer, but it really allowed me to know that if I shared what was inside of me, not just my gifts or my talents, but my intentions and my goals, that someone would be looking out for me always. And then, as we get older, of course, we know, oh yes, certainly there are always people that want to help and people that want to look out for you. But she was really one of the first teachers to do that for me, and a phenomenal actor. I remember her standing in front of this freshman class. And, at freshman level in high school, maybe some of them were just there to get their arts credential or arts points or whatever we called them. And she stood in front of the entire class and she said, if music be the food of love, play on. And only 3 kids got it, and we were just like, what is this? This is like the best teacher I've ever had in my life. It's just such.
It's funny how those catchphrases will stick in our ears and we will remember them. I had a teacher and she always said, read, reread, and take notes. And she said that at the end of every, Miss Gerald, at the end of every class. And to this day, when I'm prepping for a show or something, I read, I reread, and I take notes. Shawn, I want to go back to that 5-year-old boy that you were. To me, the 5-year-old self is that magical time in a kid's life before they go to school, and peer pressure and the labels that teachers put on us, both positively and negatively, begin to take place. What were you like as a 5-year-old kid, and what was your family dynamic really like?
Growing up, none of our family were in the arts. My grandmother, who lived in Bisbee, Arizona, about 4 hours southeast of us, from Phoenix, originally was where I'm from.
Are you originally from Arizona?
Mm-hmm. From Arizona. I grew up in Chandler and Mesa, right on the border, and we moved to California, to the San Francisco Bay, when I was, I guess 12. And that was another life-changing moment because it was theater, and there were community theaters in every town, which did not exist in Arizona. Right. But growing up in Arizona, and my family wasn't very theatrical, but they definitely loved music, and so we had music playing all the time on our record player. I constantly felt supported by my family. If I wanted to tap dance in front of the whole family at the little Sunday night dinner, everyone would okay, let's do this. And I found at 5, my father, a professional rodeo cowboy, would take us to the rodeos. And my very first paid job for $5 when I was 5 years old was to be a clown in a rodeo act. And so the 2 clowns, they had me laid down in almost like a coffin, but it was supposed to be like a time machine, teleporter of some sort. So they drove it out in the bed of the truck in between the acts, and they stood it up, and I'm in the back in a trap door. And these 2 clowns, one of whom was in drag, was the other clown's mother-in-law, and she was robust. She's very voluptuous, balloons and things.
Of course.
Dressed. Yes. And the one clown said, I can help shrink you. And she was like, oh, I would love to be. Oh, yes. Oh, I would be so thin and so perfect. So he puts her in the machine. And then, of course, I come out the trapdoor and we switch. And they put the balloons in the dress that I'm wearing. And I come out. And so instead of shrinking this way, I've shrunk this way. And I chase him off with my purse, hitting him.
And that's how it began.
And that's in Pocatello, Idaho. Not to sound like a Judy Garland song. But in Pocatello, Idaho, I heard 5,000 people applaud and laugh. And I was instantly bit by the bug, as they say. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. This is real fun. Plus, my parents were, my dad, they were both independent contractors. So my mom was a motivational speaker. My dad was a rodeo cowboy. So they made their own way and showed, my siblings and I that same life. They showed us how to, do you want to get up every day and work for someone else, or do you want to work for yourself? And being an artist, it was lucky that I had that training.
I heard an interview recently with Eartha Kitt, and she talks about going to the theater, and I think it was Jane, I can't remember who it was that she saw, but she never felt that she was loved as a kid. But sitting in the theater and feeling that love that was going across to the actors on stage was what first attracted her to this. It's one thing for your father to say, okay, Shawn, we're going to put you in the rodeo. You're going to do this. It might be fun for you. It might not be fun. But it's a whole different thing when that light bulb goes off or that click happens. Mm-hmm. And you go, wow, this is really what I want to do with my life. Did it happen at that moment for you?
As much as I can remember, I'm pretty sure that was the moment it happened. But then, then there are other moments that build upon that. Everything from the community theaters when I was a kid, and even going to see live theater, which I think is so important, whether or not you have a young person in your household that's interested in theater. Going to see, any sort of live art, whether it be a museum or a theater piece, it's going to spark something in them. Whether or not it's a performance bug isn't the point. We have master classes at our camp from all different walks of the arts. And we were lucky enough to be joined by Ruth E. Carter a few months ago, who won the Academy Award for Marvel's Black Panther for the costume design.
Yes.
And I will tell you what, I was like, I put together a Halloween costume every year. I'm sure I'll find this is interesting. However, the masterclass became about life and art and social justice and the ways in which you approach everything from making coffee, to answering the telephone. And I was just like, this is an artist. This is someone who has ideas that will certainly help anyone in any area of their life. So I think those moments were also super informative. I don't know about you, Richard, but when I go to like a master class and the teacher will say, who wants to get up on the stage? I certainly do want to, but I always find I learn more from sitting in the audience and watching someone else have the experience, because I can say, oh, that works. Oh, that didn't work so well. Do I do that? And really dissect it a little bit more. So I think those experiences really too were light bulb moments of being able to sit in classes and listen to genius teachers.
Now, you grew up in Arizona. Do you have any friends from those first 12 years of your life that are still in your life?
Oh, yes. I thought this was going to be like an episode of This Is Your Life, where you're like, welcome to the stage, your second grade teacher.
I wish that I had, yes.
Yes.
Next time.
My oldest and dearest friend, Lisa Archibald, lived across the street on Anza with her family. Obviously, she was a child. And I was 3 or 4, maybe just turning 4, and she was 2, just turning 3. And she's the most fascinating woman now. And still, we get to catch up hopefully once a year. Certainly when I'm on tour, she lives in San Diego now. And so every time I pass through San Diego, she's always in the front row, and we get to have a drink after and catch up. Most of my friends, I would say, though, are probably from my high school and college days. And then the coolest community that I never saw coming was after I had been released early from a theater contract, my first professional theater contract. The show closed early. Someone said, you should try Cabaret. And I was like, what's Cabaret? And they were like, well, it's like you get to set the keys and you get to say whatever you want. And I was like, I'm in. and
you own it, baby. You do.
And that community really became a whole new life for me, which I never would have even seen coming. Because, when I do a television show or a film, you get to be on set for weeks at a time, and you really develop these amazing connections with people, but then everyone goes on to their own work. The thing I love about the cabaret community is no matter what city you're in, we're always sort of touching base at least once a month, but in some cases once a week. If I'm in New York and we're going to Cast Party, or if you're in LA and you're going to Carrie Kelsey's, and you get to see everyone and check in with everyone. I love that form of community. I think we really should start a retirement home that we can.
I know. I love it as well. I want to ask about that move when your father. I have this vision of Leon Ames. Not Leon Ames. Ames in Meet Me in St. Louis. Someone's going to correct me. Coming in and saying, "Okay, family, we're moving to San Francisco." What was that moment like for you when you first heard that your family was going to be moving? Obviously, you're moving as a unit. It's not like you were being shipped off by yourself. Was it exciting for you, or was it scary?
Not to quote the same movie, but I literally was like, clang, clang, clang with the trolley, let's go. I loved it. I loved everything about San Francisco. My parents actually had divorced when I was 10, which ended up being a wonderful thing. They both found new partners and have wonderful lads. But I had gotten the chance to go out to San Francisco for a few months when I was 10. And then when I came back to Arizona, my dad was moving to a smaller town in Arizona. So it was a real pivotal point, which of course every child wants to live with both their parents. That's a whole...
So your parents separated?
Yes, they did, yeah. And so that's a whole Kramer versus Kramer moment, for a child. But what I saw in California...
How old were you when that happened?
Maybe 9 or 10.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's 3 or 4 years ago. And then, of course, in looking at San Francisco, I was like, there is a community theater on every block, it seemed. There were dance studios. There was voice lessons to be had. And so I just thought, well, this is the move. And then I did all of my high school at Amador Valley High School in the East Bay of San Francisco, and just had a blast. There were so many kids that liked the same things I liked, that could, they knew all the words to Sunday in the Park with George, which I think had just come out a few years before. And, it's a real pivotal moment when you say, what's that muddle in the middle? And someone finishes you. That's the puddle where the poodle did the piddle. And you're like, you're my people. You're my people.
Mm-hmm. Well, you instilled that with your theater camp still, but if you can just impart to those who may or may not be in the theater, who are just watching today, our friends, the civilians, what it's like for a young boy or a young girl who are truly finding themselves in the world, to find themselves in a theater community.
I think if you have the ability, our mission has always been to allow our students to discover and develop in a completely safe and supportive environment. And I think the reason that it's so important that it be so safe is because in order to discover, you have to jump up on that stage and you get to play all the different types of characters, and you get to explore all these different personalities of the characters, which truly are those sides of yourself, that in 6th and 7th and 8th grade, I would have never been comfortable enough showing, which is why I think when I saw like The Birdcage when I was a kid, I was like, they just get to do that? Like, that's incredible that they get to be that flamboyant and that larger than life. And I think that really helps us key into who we are as humans when we get to explore all those different characters on stage, or even in writing or, student directing on stage or off. Just being a part of the arts, I think you get to see all those different facets of what you could be, what could be possible, and really decide then what you want to make possible and what you want to have happen for your life. I think that's why the arts are essential. I don't even think they're just important. It's a necessity for students, and not just the performing arts. The visual arts, the everything. It's all important.
Now, when you see a film like The Birdcage, and it says to you, you can be as flamboyant as you want to be, were there ever along the way those that said to you, you can't be that flamboyant?
Yeah, there were a lot of, I love this generation now for body positivity and just knowing who they are. And I remember hearing things when I first entered the industry, like from an agent saying, the rounder the face, the fewer the opportunities. The limper the wrist, the fewer the opportunities. And I would just be like, huh? I'm one of the first casting directors that I ever had the opportunity to work with, who was really helpful in my career. I did a scene for a class where I had to play a soldier who was, a straight man.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the pride that she had over like, wow, you can do straight. And what really was so interesting to me about that was not that I could do that, but that I had already discovered as an artist what stories I wanted to tell, what stories were inside of me that I think are important for other people to hear to change the world with art. I think that's where we really should be approaching it. So I have a student that I'm coaching right now who may be a little bit on the effeminate side. Awesome, cool. He's like the coolest guy in the world. And I said to him the other day, it's not about like playing something. It's about finding the things you relate to in character and then bringing that part to life.
Thank you. Yes.
Just relate to it and then put it out there. Find out the why. What's the character's why, and then hopefully, find out your own why. Why are you doing it as an artist? Why do you want to be?
It's interesting. I heard an interview recently where someone who was a little person said that when she goes into an audition, they automatically think Wizard of Oz, Radio City Music Hall, Christmas Show, Elf, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, all of those elements where they want to place her. Mm-hmm. And she goes, and in reality, I'm a wife, I'm a housewife, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm all of those things also. And, it's one thing that casting directors will say, the limper the wrist, for example, mm-hmm. The more your opportunities are going to be curtailed, as opposed to saying to a young actor, let's find the possibilities mm-hmm. where we can take you to be exactly who you are. I mean, Judy Garland, we talk about Judy Garland when she arrived at MGM. They wanted her to be everything that she wasn't mm-hmm. at the early stages of her career.
It's very shocking. I think it because it's so contradictory to what they're also telling you at the same time, which is to find out who you are and bring who you are into the room and into the character. Because that's really what casting and producers hire, is the idea of like, if you can see yourself in the role and that makes the role believable. And so it's very, it's luckily it's changed in the last 5 or 10 years. This was really when I first moved to LA that I was hearing a lot of that sort of language. But now it's sort of changed into, you can't really combat someone who comes in and says, this is who I am, this is what I bring to your show, and I can't wait to work with you. Like, I want to bring all this energy and excitement to that. And then, of course, that's how legends are born. That's why we talk about. I love the story from Megan Mullally, who said that when she went in to do the network read for Will and Grace, that she had made it through all of the steps, and then she was in front of 20 suits and they weren't listening. And before she started the audition, she walked around in character and bossed everyone and told them to pay attention. And I was like, that's so brave and so cool. And I bet you already had the job before you even opened your mouth. Like, you already had shown the character.
I wish that more people would take chances like that instead of feeling like, oh my God, what's the worst thing that can happen to me? The worst thing that can happen to you is you may not get the job. And then you go on to the next one. There's always, my friend Russ Woolley always says, rejection is God's protection. And I believe that, and it's like, if this doesn't work out, I mean, like doing what we're doing right now, I reach out to a lot of people in this industry. I get a lot of yeses, but I also get a lot of no's. And if I get a no, I go, it's not the right time. It's, it has nothing to do with me 9 times out of 10, at least I don't think so. And then I move on to the next one.
It's the only way. The only way. There's got to be, all you can do is your best in the room, is what I always say to my kids. You just show your best, and the part's either yours or it's not. You have no idea what they're thinking. And so just be happy with the work you did. And when you walk out of the room, leave it in there. And then if you're not right for that role, they may call you back, years later. I have several casting directors in LA who I know, who I've worked with for years, who continue to call me in for stuff. and just say like, this is it, this is it. And when they hit, they hit. And it's just so great to know that those relationships are really what you're trying to build, not just to get the one job that you're going out for.
Now, I want to ask you a little bit about your cabaret career. When you first stepped into the world of cabaret, were you stepping into the world so that you had the freedom of your own creativity? Where was your career at the time that you were starting out? Were you creating your own path? What was it that gravitated towards you and pulled you into the world of cabaret?
Well, it was the large amounts of money and little hard work. Was this pull you right in? No, it was truly. I had entered a contest in San Francisco. I would have thought of the club. Dan Kristen owned it. P-Offs.
Yeah,
It was P-Offs, and the audience were the judges. So you could sort of stack the odds in your favor. And I invited a lot of people, and I luckily won this contest. And the prize was to be, I think, 10 cabarets around the country that you would have a night in each spot. Very lofty, big prize. And then the club went under, and the man who had won for music composition in the contest, Kelly Park, was a San Francisco native, and said, since we didn't get our prize, what would you say about doing a show together? And I'll do the first half and you do the second half, and we'll film it, and that'll be our demo for the future. So I remember at the age of 21, I think I was.
Just last year.
Last year, last spring.
Yeah, last year.
I remember calling the Plush Room in San Francisco, one of the most esteemed clubs in the world. And I was like, hey, and the guy's name was Trevor. How do I get a date there, Trevor? How do I book myself on a Saturday?
Trevor Logan.
What was I doing? He said, well, kid, you would need a demo. And I was like, what's a demo? I can do that. And so we went into the studio and recorded a few songs. And my very first cabaret show was all standards. The first album was a black and white album, just self-titled. And I remember recording all these songs.
I think I have that CD. I think I have it. I have it somewhere.
From the 30s and 40s, and I just loved that music growing up. That's all I listened to. And then basically, like, in that show, I remember singing I Got My Man, Who Could Ask for Anything More? And when we were in rehearsal, my piano player sort of stopped and said, are you going to sing the male pronoun, or are you going to sing I Got My Gal, or what are you going for? Like, how is this career going to be guided? And of course, that was at the time, where I think singers like myself were sort of looking up to like Michael Bublé and being, oh, that's how you have a career with this kind of music. And geniusly, the head of LML Music, Lee Lessig, said to me when we were doing my second album, you can sort of go after two ideas of a career in cabaret. You can either do yourself and really just do like who you are, or you can do honors, and do a show for Drew and Kern and do a show for Rodgers and Hammerstein, all that sort of stuff. And I said, well, I think I'd rather explore who I am and sort of find the facets of myself and my own quirkiness, and really cabaret, going into a stand-up comedies, meets cabaret sort of idea. And then always working with a jazz trio or a quartet. I always say like that was the weirdest mesh in all the worlds. Allowed me to feel so free that then when I was going in LA for TV and film auditions, I was booking left and right because I was like, oh, this is presence. Oh, I get it. I think a lot of stand-up comedians talk about the same thing of like, you really don't know who you are or how to own a room until you get up on that stage over and over again. So, if you're strictly a dramatic actor, I don't think you may ever have to do that. But as a comedian, it's so essential to get it up in front of rooms and try things out and try jokes out, which is weird because as I tell all my kids, I'm an introverted extrovert, or an extroverted introvert. I don't know. I'm an introvert. I'm like a light switch, and stage work is always so fun because it tests me to be like, okay, you're on. But I'm still the guy that, if I go to the gym these days, I'm always nervous. I'm always overthinking things. What should I wear? How should I stand?
When you first hit that stage, that first time, well, let's back up for a moment. First of all, how did you put your show together? Did you have an outside director, or did you basically put the show together on instinct?
Yeah, I'm sort of the lesson in how not to do it. I think I just started finding songs I liked, and I mean, I was probably making tons of mistakes. At like 23, I was singing "Could I Leave You?" You know, what was I doing?
I'm still here.
They were songs that appealed to me. And then after 2 or 3 years, you know, playing all the clubs and all the circuits, and also doing stand-up clubs too. I did a lot of stand-up with music. That's when people started writing material for me, or my musical director Kelly Park and I started writing songs. So that's where it's sort of formulated into like, oh, you're more of a writer, and certainly not, you know, like a club singer. It turned into doing all the special material, and that's really where I started to like formulate it. Then in terms of comedy, I don't know if it was emceeing the kids camp, because that's a real comedy gig. It's a constant to keep all the kids entertained and stuff. I don't know if it was that or if it was the cabaret work, but I just kept a bag of tricks. And so when people say like the show's different every night, and especially the musicians, because the musicians, if I can make the musicians laugh, I know I've done my job. Or a producer, someone who comes and sees the show a lot, yeah, that's good. It's all just a bag of tricks that somehow the improv experience that I had just allowed me to say, like, let's just keep throwing things out there. But I've also written cabaret shows for people who don't feel as comfortable with patter, and certainly don't feel comfortable with like audience interaction or any of that. Like, and it'll be different after.
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of people make in cabaret is a one-size-fits-all formula, because it's never that. And beyond that, you've traveled all over the country doing your show. Do you find that the general themes of your shows work everywhere you go, or do you alter your show depending on what town you're performing in?
That's a really good question. I don't feel like I ever alter it to go more conservative, say. So like in New York, I feel like New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, those are cities that I'm meant for. Those are my cities. Those are like, yes, these are people. I can just like wink a certain way. I like in New York for years, my second song would be the start of Last 5 Years. And I would I would open with a big like number, like welcome to the show. And then the bass player would just start bowing, Jamie is over and Jamie is gone. And we'd make it through like a line of it. And then I'd be like, I'm just kidding. And New York would just die laughing, like, oh my gosh, thank you. You obviously can't do that sort of a joke in Reno. You know, they're going to be like, we don't even understand what you're doing. So
right.
The shows like in Reno or like in the more conservative parts of the world, those shows actually get a little dirtier, because I think I feel like I have to allow them to know that I'm relaxed so they can relax.
Mm-hmm.
So if I see like two, you know, I've definitely performed a seas of cowboy hats and just like, woo, who booked me here? Like, this is Terry Fator.
You know, coming through the rodeo must have helped you with that.
It did. But I will instantly, you know, pull two guys from the front row and be like, you know, that one time at Boy Scout camp, it did count. And then they lose it, because they know that I'm comfortable with what I'm talking about. And then I think it allows them to come along just for a night.
Well, also at the beginning of your shows, you always let the audience know, if there's anyone in the audience who's here that doesn't know who I am, this is who I am. And it's not subtle, and you hit the audience over the head with it, and it works. It works so brilliantly with you.
Oh, thank you. It's a really fun way to not have to pay for therapy.
I think I remember telling you that when you did your last show that I saw in New York, I was sitting next to a couple who came in off the street. Do you remember this?
Yes, I don't remember the story, but
yes, but they did not know anything about you. They had never even been in a cabaret room before. They just happened to be walking past Don't Tell Mama, see a group of people going in, say, what's going on there? And someone said, well, there's a show going on. And they decided to come and see you. And I think that one of the biggest mistakes that I see happening, especially in New York City cabaret, and you can talk about LA and San Francisco beyond this, is that there's a perception in New York, it's a very incestuous community, that the artist on stage knows every person in that audience. There are a lot of inside jokes. There are things that are directed. People drop names like they think that the people in the audience are going to know who they are, and they don't. And I think that it's because it's not that easy, especially in the world of cabaret, to build an audience beyond people who are not familiar with who you are. What is your secret? Is it still a difficult thing for you in terms of building audiences? Or do you feel that you've developed this following with whatever town you performed in?
That's such a good question. I definitely find that every time I perform in New York, I've got to, I mean, I know 70% of the audience, but also that's, I think, because I'm not from New York. So when I come back to New York to do a show, it's sort of like a homecoming week, you know, like, oh, I was here for a while and let's all hang out. And I do the same when performers come to LA from New York. Let's bring a group and come in and watch your show because you've brought your show all the way across the country. And I know how challenging that can be. But I remember playing, one of my biggest shows to date was the Herbst Theater, and it was a big show. I think it was 900 people in the audience, and it was just me and my fantastic band and backup singers and dancers, and it was a big variety, you know, sort of a la Shirley MacLaine at the Palace sort of feel. And I remember when I asked the audience, how many of you have known me before tonight? And I heard the applause. And then I said, how many of you are just discovering me for the first time? And it was 50-50. And I was so glad that I had waited until the show was about half over to ask that question, because it might have made me so nervous had I known that in the beginning. Because it's, you know, it's a challenge to, some of the hardest audiences I've ever had are audiences where no one knows who I am. But then hopefully, if you don't, you know, if you don't adjust and you just know that you've been working this out for years with other people, then hopefully they'll come along for the journey. I think we both did the same gig. I think I've done it maybe 2 or 3 times now, the GNI up in the Poconos. And they're just the most wonderful.
About that.
Yeah, there's a wonderful group of
we can tell them about this because you and I both have performed. And, well, I'll tell them what it is. I mean, full disclosure today. And I mean, full disclosure.
Full disclosure. It's a great group of men, and it's called the Gay Naturists International. And they are this amazing group of men that go for, I don't know, 10 days or something every summer, and they have a nudist camp.
And I've done the circuit. I mean, the first time that I performed there, this was when I was performing as Carol Channing. I came out, and as Carol, I said to the audience, you know, I've always been told that if you're nervous, to imagine your audience. And I just did this slow burn across the audience, and the audience got the laugh, and they got the joke, and they were right there. And one of the best audiences to perform for.
For those of you at home listening to this, you have to understand, we as the performers are clothed.
That's right.
We're clothed. We're like fully clothed. It's a show. But the entire audience of 450 men are stark naked. And you can see them. And the best picture that anyone ever took is from the back. John Ainsworth took from the back of the house the standing ovation when the lights had come up. And it's just a sea of 400 naked butts. And it's so cute. But the reason I bring it up is because it's very rare nowadays to have a gig where absolutely no one knows who you are. Right. In the old days, when I started touring and I had done like America's Got Talent and some TV shows and stuff, you know, people would say, oh, from America's Got Talent. Now with the internet being so prolific, you don't really always know what someone's from. So you're just like, well, I'm going to trust that G and I booked the right person. I'm going to go see the show. But the best part of it is you get to use all your material. If no one knows who you are, you're like, here's a gem from 1942. You know, like I wrote this joke when I was 20. And it's going to be, hopefully it's going to land still.
One of the greatest, somebody told Carol Channing that I was performing for a nudist group. And Carol's response was good. He knows whether they like him or not.
That's amazing.
And that was, she had a great sense of humor about those things. So it was quite fun. But it's, you know, it's interesting because, and I don't know about you, I'm not fond of doing country clubs because, and Carol and I talked about this once, Country club audiences are not there necessarily to see you, but to see each other and to be seen. And it's a complete, and to win them over. I've also had the pleasure of performing in both Vegas and Atlantic City. It's a completely different ballgame when you're performing in a casino, and you're trying to win that audience over. They're thinking about how much money they just lost, or what they may win, or a myriad of things. And also, one thing that we don't talk about as artists is, and look at the year that we've just had. On any given night, you can be getting ready to go on stage when some major news story has broken, literally an hour before you go on stage, and you have to take the audience on this journey with you.
Yeah, it's. I agree with the country club thing too. I'm so grateful to the senior homes and the country clubs and that have paid my way around the country, because a lot of times I'm able to play New York for 2 nights because Hingham, Massachusetts has hired me or something like that. So those clubs are great. I think also cruise ships were such a good life lesson, where they're like, you will have 45 minutes and that's it. And believe me, at 27 minutes, no matter how genius you are, they're thinking about the next buffet or the casino or the shuffleboard, something else to go do, because that's what a cruise ship is for. So I absolutely, when they moved me to lounges on cruise ships, I found those to be so much easier because the pressure was off. The invention of the cordless microphone was probably my best friend.
Oh, I love it. You're a very audience directed entertainer, and which I love, as you know. But I want to ask you, since breaking into the world of cabaret, and you truly have established your position in this community, in this world, what do you like most about some of the changes that you've seen over the years? And what are some of the things that you really miss that were in place when you first began that are no longer there?
Oof. Well, I love the idea that the artists get paid now. I used to work, and I don't know if people just starting out will have the same experience, and I don't want to brag if they don't have the same experience. But here's what to look forward to. I do like having a club call and say, this is your fee, and here's your fee to come perform. I think that's so generous. I think it also really speaks to the club, because not to like say specific clubs do specific deals, because that's, everyone gets a different thing, obviously. But like, there are so many clubs, like Michael Holmes's Purple Room in Palm Springs is a genius example of a man that has built his own audience and brings people in to share them with his audience. That is the model that I just wish every single club had, because it's so much easier if we can focus on the show and not have to focus on, flyering before a show. Not that that's a bad thing, because that's actually one of the things I loved the most, and that's how I met the most people when I started. I went to go see Sutton Foster in Thoroughly Modern Millie. And I remember thinking, I purposefully did a Monday night show so the industry could come see me. And I had a coat over my arm that I had worn to the theater, and in the breast pocket was, maybe 30 or 40 4x6 postcards for my show. And I said, I'm going to wait at the stage door, and I'm going to meet Sutton Foster, and I'm going to invite her to my show, and this is going to be a star-making moment. And as she came out, I got so nervous that I let my arm down, and all 40 postcards scattered where. And do you know that Sutton Foster got down on her hands and knees and helped me pick up every single one of them? And she just was the most supportive.
Are you reading the cards as you're picking them up?
I'm like, do you have Monday night free? I can give you 1 comp. So it was just like all those fun things that we always used to call them Leno stories. We'd say if something, what felt horrible at the time happened.
You are giving away your age. I mean, we used to call them Carson stories.
Carson stories.
And I always had my Carson stories, and it never happened.
Someday.
But you've mapped out your own journey on this. I want to talk for a few moments about the camp before we do run out of time. It's been how many years now?
This will be the 20th season of the Young Actors.
Wow, it seems like you just started.
Literally, I don't understand. I was working in a program as an assistant camp director. And that program transitioned into another program. And the program director at the time had just said, I can't do another project. Would you want to do it? And I think I was 21 and just out of college and just thought, well, I could try. And so I learned how to program direct in Berkeley, California for this wonderful theater organization. And then when it got bought over, we just thought, well, what if we turned it into its own thing? And my mom's best friend was leasing a camp, an overnight camp. And she was renting out the weeks. And she said, we'll give you a real good deal. I was like, an overnight camp? And we did it. And we took the leap. And it was 36 or 37 kids the first camp. And it was 1 week long. And now in a year, we have close to 900 campers. We've got 5 summer camps, a winter camp. The winter camp films that the kids make have been getting into festivals around the world, but notably the Cannes Film Festival. And then the summer camp, one of the projects during summer camp, because there's 100, produces original musicals. And so our musical last year was able to come to 54 Below just before the pandemic. And Laurie Metcalf was so wonderful. And
yeah.
They came and
when that was happening.
It was so fun. So all these amazing opportunities for kids to learn, but in a professional environment, and then to go back a step, a professional environment that requires no audition. So being one of the known theater camps in the country, we are the only one of those that doesn't require an audition for admittance.
And why was their choice made?
Well, it's really interesting because in the beginning, it was, of course, registration-based. Let's just get as many kids as we can. And then as the years went on and the camp got more and more popular and sold out faster, people would say, what if we should we do audition-based so we have the best of the best? Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting. Our associate director, who doesn't mind me sharing her age, but she's now 29, and she was a camper when she was 14. So she's been with the company for 15 years. And she was one of the first to speak up and say, I don't know if I would have come to the camp if there had been an audition. Because we don't just train performers. We train in improv, we train in sketch comedy writing, and screenplay, directing, producing, costuming, makeup, set design, behind the camera and in front of it, on stage and off, everything. So if you just think like, what if the next Steven Spielberg or the next Ava DuVernay doesn't have a monologue in their back pocket to audition with? They just stay home for the summer, and then we miss the opportunity, to grow. I always tell our kids, we have very few drop-off kids. Almost none. It's a specialized camp. Kids want to come to the camp. But there was a camper who came when he was 13 years old because his sister was sent to the camp. And his mom said, you will go too. And he said to me, I just want to play basketball all summer long. And I said, if you learn this monologue, I will let you play basketball as much as you want for the summer. And 3 years ago, he won the Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical, Ariel Statchel. And when I got to go backstage to see him, he introduced me to everyone. This is the guy that taught me my first monologue. And
he let me play basketball.
Yeah, so that I could play basketball. So it's just interesting that, we want everyone to have the opportunity to know that it's this completely safe and supportive environment to just try it, just have fun. And if you're a genius musical theater singer, you're going to develop in that. But maybe you've never had improv. Maybe you've never had writing. And so much of this next generation is self-creation, as we see.
And how many of the kids, or is it also worked into your curriculum, or do you bring people in who really talk about the business end of this business? Because I think that that's something that is so lacking in most theater schools.
Yeah, we definitely have business of show business. We have a special program right now that's running called The Hive, and it's a mastermind group for pre-professionals and their families. So every single week, we get together and talk about the things that we need to be doing to elevate our careers. And then once a month, we meet with the families to be able to help them understand where their child is at. And it's mainly for our older section of the camp. But I think, unfortunately, so much of the arts becomes about audition, memorization, and regurgitation. Mm-hmm. And what we really focus on at camp is since we're not doing The Sound of Music, we don't put on a play with all the kids. We have specialized programs that do that, but it really takes it out of, one kid being Maria and the rest of us having to choose between being a Nazi or a nun. You know, like, I'm not number 47 all summer. And instead we get to, you know, I had a student, Sarah Whalen, years ago in the film department, and she came to me and said, I really love the musicals. I'd love to stay back in the screenwriting class. I have this idea and I'd like to work it out. This was in August. And by December, she had finished her script and we made it at the Film King. And by May, I was on a beach with her in Cannes, France, where her film was premiering at the Cannes Film Festival.
That's amazing.
And she was like, wait, it works this way? And I'm like, that's what I think we all need to understand, is if we help you understand the business aspects, it takes it away from being like, show business is all about who you know. And it really trains you to understand marketing and networking, and that they're great things that can help your career flourish. And like you said, even a lot of colleges still aren't teaching it. They're letting their kids graduate college and they have no concept as to what to do next.
And when it comes to your camp, what is your holy grail?
Oh, what a good question. Ask it to me in another way.
What is the most important thing that you need for your camp right now?
Oh, do you mean like in terms of support?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I will tell you, word of mouth is probably the best thing that anyone ever gives to us. We've had all these fabulous celebrities who have come to teach at the camp, who are wonderful teachers, sharing the news. I think as an arts organization, anytime you buy a ticket to something, post about it. It's really helpful for people to know, like, Hadestown was one of the best shows.
You know, today is, I mean, think testimonials. Testimonials. Everyone, if you know somebody who went, anything, and I want to say to you, don't hesitate, and I mean this sincerely. If there's something that's newsworthy that you want to share, feel free to go to my page on Facebook and just post. Don't even ask, just post it.
Thank you, because it really is about lifting everyone else's dream up. And that's what I tell my kids. No one will ever be able to share your dream if you don't share it with them first. And that's like the thing that's kept us going for so many years, is all these people, whether you're Darren, Chris, or whether you've come to the camp once as a camper and you loved it, sharing the information is so important. And
do you take donations?
Always, yeah. We have a great scholarship program. We're able to send anywhere between 10 and 15% of our campers every year through scholarship. And anyone who's watching this who knows a camper that would be right for scholarship, the application process is quite simply one page. It's so simple. Our whole goal is, if you want to come to camp, we will find a way to get you there. And that's where all of our donations go to, is to our scholarship fund.
Well, Shawn, I can't believe this, but we are at the end of our show. I always try to, I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to be respectful of the time of every person who is here today. And we'll watch this later on, hopefully. There are so many places that you could have been for this last hour. And if you chose to spend it with Shawn and myself, and I know I'm speaking for you as well, we truly appreciate it. It means so much to me. If you enjoyed today's show, and if you're not a subscriber already, I am almost 10 away from 1,000 subscribers. And you subscribed today, Shawn. I saw it, and it popped up on my feed.
I can't believe I wasn't a subscriber, because I was a longtime fan. Sometimes I watch the shows and you just forget. So just right now, don't forget. Just go click.
If you're watching this show right now, please, please, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit the like button if you did indeed like today's show. And if you leave a comment, that's even better. It lets us know what your thoughts are about the show today. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list, and the third name that pops up, reach out with a phone call. Not an email, not a text message, not a private message, a phone call. Because it's very important that we let each other know that we're there for them, and find out where they are right now. As a dear friend says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. But if you're going to be in that boat, make sure that you have a skipper join you. Think about that. Now, before I leave, I'm actually going to leave the screen, because I want to give you the platform to yourself. Anything that we've talked about today that you want to expound upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to anyone who's watching right now. Shawn, I have loved you from the moment I first saw you on stage. I'm a huge fan of yours, not only on stage, but this really is worthy of celebrating always. Thank you for the gifts that you've given to the world and that you will continue to give. This is just going to keep getting bigger and better and brighter than ever. I love you. The stage is all yours.
How exciting. I didn't know this was going to happen. Well, as Richard was just saying, I believe also in random acts of kindness and throwing goodness around. For those of you that don't know, I have a couple of albums. You may have one, you may have all three, I don't know. But here's what I'm going to do today. I want anyone who subscribes to this channel to send me an email, and it's just my first name, SHAWN, at campyatc.com. And just send me an email and say, I subscribed. I'm going to send you a free album of your choosing. Because I want you all to subscribe. Richard's so near this big moment. And I love big moments. I love those platforms. As Oprah once said to Charlize Theron, it's all about the journey. And you won't appreciate any of the accolades at the end if you don't appreciate the journey. And thank you, Richard, for everything you do. This is absolutely so much fun to just sit for an hour and regale you all with stories, as Judy Garland would say. That was a really bad Judy Garland impression. Rick Sky will have to have a one-on-one. I love you all. I've had so much fun today. And thank you, Richard. Thank you. Thank you.